today I'm going to be talking about all things EEAT. I'm going to be inviting everybody to kind of think beyond the here and now and look towards what the future of search has in store for us, both as individuals and as professionals working in the digital arena. So what we're going to be looking at, I'm going to be giving a quick recap of EEAT, setting the stage, sharing some predictions and ideas for how SEO and content marketing are going to shift in years to come. And I'm going to be giving you guys some actionable takeaways for kind of what you can begin using today to ensure that your brand's website outranks and outperforms its competition in the years to come. So let's recap and set the stage, because to have any kind of shred of hope of understanding the future and even the present, we first need to make sure we've got a solid grasp of what has gone before. So we need to take a look at the beginnings of Google's EEAT framework. Once upon a time, it stood for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Expertise being, does the author of a piece of content have the knowledge and qualifications to back up what they're saying? Authoritativeness being, is the site reputable within its industry? Does it have a really great topical authority about what it's saying? And trustworthiness, can the website's creators be trusted to provide correct information and secure browsing for users? Now, EEAT was introduced way back in 2014, which feels like a lifetime ago now, as part of Google's quality rater guidelines. And as the name suggests, these are guidelines that the Google's quality raters follow when assessing kind of the relevance, accuracy, and utility of content on the web. It was introduced in 2014, as I say, but it really gained traction in 2018 following the now infamous Medic core update. And this kind of put a whole new emphasis on the quality and reliability of your money, your life content, specifically medical content, but also kind of legal, financial content as well. Why did it do this? Well, in a word, safety. We know that knowledge is power, but the wrong knowledge in the wrong hands has the potential to be really dangerous. Kind of an analogy I've used with people before is, would you want your appendix taken out after by somebody who's read instructions written by an amateur? Probably not. So even though kind of this Medic update began with kind of very health-related content specifically, it transcends a lot of boundaries and it spills out way beyond the obvious spaces like medicine and finance into other industries, because ultimately consumers need protecting from scams and incorrect information, whatever they're searching for. And this is really what's always sat at the heart of EEAT. So now we understand the past, we can take a look at the present. Now we have EEAT, or double EAT, as it's slightly easier to say. At the end of 2022, Google added a second E to the EEAT framework, and this second E stands for experience. Experience being, can the author demonstrate genuine lived experience of the topic in question? Why did it do this? Well, it kind of depends who you ask. At face value, we can see experience as being the sum of EAT's parts. By this, I mean, if somebody has lived experience of a given problem or with a particular product, by default, they're going to have a certain level of expertise. They're going to be able to speak with authority, and they're going to be seen as a trustworthy source of information on that topic. But I think we can push it further than this. And I think we can see the inclusion of this second E as the first, albeit unofficial, action that Google took in response to the rise of generative AI and the very real risk of unhelpful, unqualified content appearing on SERPs as a result. Think about it this way. When was the last time you saw ChatGPT walking down the street into that new Italian restaurant that's opened and trying out the menu? And when was the last time you saw Bard working through 5 years of university to start practicing as a registered dentist? You haven't, right? And it's this lived experience that's the key differentiating factor between human and artificial intelligence. So it makes sense for Google to leverage it as the marker of high quality, trustworthy information. And actually, just this morning here in the Manchester office, we were listening to the news, and the Merriam-Webster Dictionary has announced that its word of the year for 2023 is authentic. And this shows how global interest in issues surrounding truth, trust, and originality is greater now than ever before. So just to illustrate kind of a quick history of EEAT, and we can see here that ChatGPT was launched in November 2022, and coincidentally, just a month after it, Google adds the second E to the framework. Coincidence? Perhaps not. So now we understand the past and the present. We can turn to the main event, which I'm guessing is why everybody signed up for and tuned into today's talk. I'm going to share some predictions on how the state of search is going to evolve in the months and years to come. These are the things that I believe businesses in all industries will need to put into practice if they want to carry on outranking and outperforming their competitors moving forwards. So, prediction number 1. Taking Google's lead and kind of throwing some more letters into the EEAT framework, my first prediction is that we'll see an N added to the quality guidelines, and this N will stand for new. Now, in truth, this N could sit anywhere within the acronym, but if we put it at the front, it makes a word. So that's what I'm going to go with. So yeah, in the future, we'll have neat. And in practice, I see this being Google rewarding content that presents new, innovative ideas, content that shares original perspectives and experiences, and content that pushes existing knowledge bases further than ever before. And giving rise to this prediction is a belief that kind of the buzzword generative AI is kind of fundamentally misleading. It invites people to think that AI tools have the capacity to create, when in reality, all they can really do is reproduce with varying levels of success. A more appropriate title for tools like ChatGPT, like Jasper AI, like Bard, might be transformative AI, since all they're ultimately doing is consuming, processing, and regurgitating content that already exists on the web. And if all we ever do is rehash the same information, how can we hope to make any progress? We can't. Improvement and advancement come from having the courage to pursue new ideas and establish different models of thinking, not from redressing what we already know. But what's Google said about this? Well, spoiler alert, it's not breaking news. And actually, Google has made its stance on the issue of unoriginal content pretty clear from the get-go. It's published successive anti-spam guidelines for creators and rolled out a number of spam updates to weed out offending content. And when we look at the guidance from Google itself, we can instantly see a common theme emerging. So this is the kind of public available spam policy that Google has published. We can see that creators need to provide added value, additional useful services, original content or value, unique benefit to the user, substantial added value. The same words are used again and again. If creators copy content from other sites, copy and republish, with modifying it only slightly, they're going to struggle to rank. And this also makes perfect sense, because Google wants to protect its users from out-of-date, potentially incorrect information by returning the most relevant, helpful content possible. And if the quality raters can see the kind of new research, original ideas, genuine human thought is being layered throughout a website's content, this is a solid indication that the resources being shared deserve to rank highly on SERPs. All that being well, how would we go about executing this in practice? Well, the first thing we shouldn't do is be relying on the likes of ChatGPT, Jasper AI, Bard to write our content for us. Now, I'm not saying that AI tools don't have a place in modern businesses and their marketing functions. I think they do. I use AI day to day, week to week in my role. My team uses it. We don't use it for writing content. It's incredibly powerful as a resource to use when kind of summarizing long articles. We've even started using it to take meeting notes as a reference point to look back on. But the ways in which we use AI tools, when there's any kind of degree of creativity involved, need to be tempered with extreme caution. As well, we need to be using in-house experts for their exclusive knowledge and insights on the topics we're covering. And if we don't have these experts at arm's reach, we need to be going out and finding them from elsewhere and getting them to contribute to the content that we're sharing. We need to be doing regular in-depth SERP analysis to establish really solid benchmarks for existing competitor content. And not seeking to kind of match that, but asking, what can we as a business do to add to what's already available to provide this further value for searchers? To provide this additional value, we're going to need to put time and effort into hyper-relevant research that sets us apart from everybody else. But of course, this is going to put a strain on resources. So I think the future of search may well be a story of quality over quantity, with creators publishing fewer pieces of far higher quality content than ever before. So that's prediction number one. Moving on to prediction number two. And it kind of leads on quite nicely because my second prediction is that Google will add a third E to its EEAT guidelines to give us EEAT, which, for the sake of tongue twisters, I'm going to call triple EAT. And it leads on nicely because this third E will stand for effort. Because I think in the future, SERP success will demand a fair bit of elbow grease. Why will this be the case? Well, there's no getting away from the fact that one of the biggest draws of using AI within business is to streamline operations and cut costs. But this poses a real problem for Google. I think if businesses see the rise of AI as an opportunity to make cutbacks, take shortcuts with their marketing functions, they're fundamentally and facially misguided. When we rely on AI to automate things like content production, image generation, video creation, all we're really demonstrating is disinterest and laziness, neither of which relates to genuine expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. Researching a topic in breadth and depth takes time, and qualifying what you've learned with credible experts takes resources and effort. But if we're not prepared to put this effort into the content we're creating, do we really deserve to rank highly on SERPs? And what's Google said about this? Well, we know that Google's stance on what creators need to do to meet the existing EEAT quality criteria has always been pretty clear. And the quality raters have a near 200-page reference document to use when assessing sites. So it's not as if EEAT is a simple kind of 3 tick box process. It's an incredibly complex, incredibly nuanced field, which is why SEO exists as a professional space. But the whole story of EEAT became a whole lot more interesting in August of last year with the helpful content update. With this, Google put a whole new emphasis on crafting content that provides a satisfying user experience. And it set out how it would be tackling kind of the rising number of web pages that appeared to have been created specifically just to rank on SERPs. But how do we... Oh, yeah, sorry, we can see here what Google said about this in its helpful content update. We can see, Google wants to provide satisfying experiences, creating satisfying content, bringing this additional value, demonstrating first-hand expertise and depth of knowledge. But what do we mean by satisfying? Well, a lot of SEOs have interpreted it at face value to mean kind of providing users with the information they need and little more. But I think this is a gross underestimation of what's involved. If we look at the dictionary definition of satisfying, we can see that it also means pleasurable, enjoyable, convincing, persuasive, fulfilling. Satisfying means far more than just meeting the minimum requirements. It means kind of taking a far more holistic approach to content creation and taking a far wider range of factors into account. But what are these factors? What is this going to look like in practice? As well as this kind of holistic approach, we're going to need to be meeting all EEAT requirements, including clear examples of first-hand experience, genuine expertise, and off-page trust signals. We're going to need to be kind of including original images, illustrations, diagrams, graphical representations of data to make really complex concepts easier to understand for our users. We're going to need to be including and creating downloadable assets, ebooks, white papers, infographics, thought leadership resources that provide real added value for a user. We need to be giving careful consideration to on-page UX and incorporating features that enhance readability, scannability, and overall satisfaction for the reader. These might include navigation menus, information architecture best practices, accessibility features, and more. And we need to be going out of our way to find and include unique insights from trusted sources that we can't just find from page 1 of SERPs. We need to be finding original insights. Prediction 2, moving on to prediction 3. Staying with the triple EAT model, this third E could also stand for environment. Now, by environment, I'm talking about the environmental impacts of search, of online information sharing, and of Google's own operations. Many people don't realize that websites all have their own carbon footprints, as an amount of CO2e is generated each time a user accesses a website's pages and consumes this information. Why? Well, because Google's data centers consume huge amounts of electricity, and the production of electricity generates carbon dioxide. But Google's business case for kind of putting a whole new focus on the environmental credential of the website is, in my view, threefold. Firstly, going forward, we're entering an era defined by environmental crises and led by a generation of climate-conscious consumers. More and more, I think we're going to see big businesses held to ever higher sustainability standards by their target markets. And we're going to see being purpose-led becoming a prerequisite for commercial success. We can see this when we look at the kind of global search volume trend for the keyword sustainability over the past 5 years. It's increased threefold from 2019 to now, and this trajectory just keeps going up. Business case number 2 is that we can't forget Google itself as a business with ambitious profit targets and kind of a commercial agenda led by decision makers who kind of are putting profits front and center. And business case number 3 is actually all of this is happening within a bigger picture where Google is actually lagging behind several of its key competitors in terms of the sustainability progress already made and the commitments it's put forward for the decade ahead. And this bigger picture becomes a whole lot clearer when we look at Google's environmental impact against those of its closest competitors. So I've taken the Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions of Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Apple from recent sustainability report. And we can see that Google is at quite a significant competitive advantage. But for big tech companies like these, offsetting carbon emissions using kind of the standard methods that you or I might use day to day isn't quite as practical. Putting it in more tangible terms, it takes 46 trees to remove 1 metric ton of CO2e from the atmosphere. So when we look at the Scope 2 emissions from Google, they'd need to plant in the region of 304,580,352 mature trees to offset its carbon footprint. And that's a lot of trees. So how would Google do this? Well, it's not just speculation, because Google has already published its stance on how it plans to work towards a greener future. Alongside investing in renewables and alongside using recycled materials in its physical products, in its 2023 environmental report, Google sets out its sustainability goals for the rest of the decade and states how reducing its scope 2 emissions, which primarily come from the demands of its data centers, will be a key focus for its decarbonisation efforts going forwards. But what will this look like? How will it reduce the electricity demands of its data centers? Well, I think Google is going to start rewarding lighter websites that use less electricity and place smaller demands on its servers. Lighter websites will be streamlined sites with only the necessary pages and content. Nothing more, nothing less. Websites with faster page speed and optimal core web vitals, which is going to mean for brands investing in robust technical SEO foundations from the get-go. It's also going to see Google doing fewer routine crawls of what's already in its index. Every time Google crawls the web, it uses energy. Fewer crawls means less energy being used. It's going to see Google evaluating sites as whole entities. So fluff, heavy pages, unnecessary content may impact the ranking potential of other higher quality, lighter pages. It's going to mean for us as SEOs, as content creators, as brands, we're going to need to recalibrate our approach to content creation and website management away from a just get it written and published mindset. We're going to need to prioritize things like on-page UX and make it easier and quicker for users to find the information they're looking for. And we're going to need to put sustainable website design principles into practice at the outset of any project. And kind of critically, and this is where I see this prediction differing from the others that I've already talked through, I see these environmental signals being key determinants of a website's ranking potential. In the future, SERPs will equal sustainability. Why? Well, because the data that is used to kind of determine a website's environmental credentials is quantitative. It's not qualitative. The authority, the kind of expertise of a writer is somewhat subjective. And that's why Google uses real human quality raters to assess things. But the energy used by a website, the carbon generated each time somebody accesses its pages, that's fixed. That information is already available. And there are websites that you can use to kind of find out what your own website's carbon footprint is. So this places the environmental credentials in a really similar space to core web vitals and gives rise to kind of a future state of search where a website's digital carbon footprint sits as a foundation stone in wider SEO strategies. So after all this, what, as marketers, do we need to remember? Some key takeaways. Number one, you're not competing with ChatGPT. You're competing with the guy who's using it. And AI tools are only as good as they are. People that don't understand when and when not to use AI will, I think, be the victims of their own streamlining efforts. If your competitors are singing ChatGPT's praises from the rooftops right now, put more effort, put more humanity into your content strategies, because it'll put you in pole position as things change. Number two, and this takeaway is inspired by a recent seminar led by Google's own public liaison, Danny Sullivan, in which one of his biggest take-home messages was this. He says, if you chase the algorithm, you're behind. If you chase what people like, you're ahead of the algorithm. So my message is, be wary of any self-titled experts who claim to be kind of search-first writers or marketers. If your in-house or agency SEOs are working to please Google, your brand and its online presence will always be one step ahead, one step behind. We need to kind of throw traditional B2B, even B2C models out of the window and start thinking and communicating in H to H, human to human terms. We need to understand that we're person-first creators, and we need to put our energy into producing exceptional resources for real human users. We need to be thinking about what individuals want, need, enjoy, dislike, fear, value, and the results are going to speak for themselves. Number 3, online visibility and environmental credentials will become a factor that directly facilitates or hinders ranking potential. As the states of business, branding, and SEO become ever more intertwined with wider sustainability challenges, Google's going to have no choice but to reward websites that meet certain environmental standards. It's also going to need to run fewer crawls to streamline its data center operations and reduce the amount of energy used by its servers, which means that we're going to need to kind of put a focus on content quality at the outset. It can't be an afterthought. It needs to be a priority from day one. And takeaway number 4, demonstrating these expert insights, this unique analysis, experience, original research, it all takes effort, but these are going to be ranking prerequisites going forwards. Anybody, probably even my grandma, no offense, grandma, she's not watching, can put a prompt into ChatGPT and get a long form response. And anybody can then copy, paste, and share that response with their audience as if it were their own. But where's the credibility in that? As the state of search shifts and as our access to information evolves alongside it, simply putting words on a page is no longer going to be sufficient to rank. In the future, the winners will be those who recognize the essentiality of pursuing more holistic content strategies that present information in a far wider range of formats and mediums than ever before. In the future, we need to think beyond the here and now. We need to move ahead of the algorithms. We need to position ourselves now to outperform and outrank our competitors as search evolves. I've been Ellie Wraith. Thanks very much for listening. If you want to hear more about kind of all things EEAT and what the future might hold for SEO, myself and a few people in my team will be speaking at the Digital PR Summit in Manchester next year. It'd be great to see as many people there as possible. And if you have any questions following this, I think we have a little bit of time now for questions, Amy. But if you think of anything after the fact, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to strike up a conversation on that. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Ellie. That was really, really interesting. I think there's so many insights that we can go away and think about as well. So if anyone does have any questions, as Ellie said, we've got a couple of minutes. Please do pop them into the chat box. I think one question I had, Ellie, was, you know, do you think that there are going to be even more conversations kind of opening up around the kind of bias that come with AI and also synthetic content?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's already been quite a lot of issues with kind of AI hallucinations. One, which is where kind of AI tools kind of make connections between concepts that don't exist when they're fed kind of incomplete, out-of-date information, and they produce wrong answers as a result. And people that don't have the wider understanding to fact check this don't know it's wrong. You don't know when you don't know you're wrong. So that's a really big issue. And kind of there's loads of books being written at the minute about kind of how AI generated responses are, like you say, kind of consolidating existing biases, kind of making racist, sexist, kind of exclusive conclusions. And it's up to us to go against this. It's up to us to know when this is wrong. And that's where kind of the human element to content is really, really going to come more and more into play in the years to come, I think. But yeah, it's such an interesting topic that kind of me and my team speak about a lot.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I know there are some talks on Brighton SEO as well.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah, definitely eye-opening. And then kind of how do you think kind of businesses can start to make their sites lighter in order to reduce their carbon footprint, which you did mention, while still maintaining high quality content that Google will reward them for?
So something that I touched on was kind of the nothing more, nothing less, kind of like a Goldilocks mindset. Kind of not too hot, not too cold, just right. We need to be thinking if the content needs to be on the site, fine, let's have it on the site. If we're creating content to kind of satisfy what we think search needs, we need to really, really, really be questioning, does that content need to be on the site? From a more technical perspective, things like optimizing images, kind of compressing them to reduce file size, optimizing the code, kind of really kind of investing in these robust technical SEO foundations from the outset, and kind of going into the analytics platforms that we can use, like Search Console, to look at kind of page speed, load speed, and making tweaks whenever we can to kind of bring those down. These are all going to really help make websites lighter.
Perfect. No, that all sounds really good. I think that's all we do have time for. If anyone does have any questions, they want to obviously connect with Ellie afterwards, then they can do on LinkedIn. And then this session will also be uploaded to our LoftTalk YouTube channel as well as a full blog post on our website. Our managing director, James Brockbank, is lined up for our next LoftTalk in December. So make sure that you do keep an eye on our socials for more information on that as well. But thank you everyone for joining, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks again, Ellie.